Hello, all. We're going to talk about another European dictator. This is Franco, who becomes the leader of the Nationalist Party in Spain. As a brief biography, he was born in 1892 in Spain, and he was born to a family who had a long tradition of serving in the Navy. When Franco was coming of age to enlist in the Navy, however, Spain was making reductions in their Navy, so he joined the Army instead. This proved to be a pretty successful career path for him, and after training, he was stationed in Spanish Morocco, which was one of the holdings of Spain left over from the imperialist period. And there he earned a lot of recognition for his work. Became part of the Spanish Foreign Legion and really became well known because of his work in Spanish Morocco. This helps him rise through the ranks quickly, and by age 33 he was a brigadier general. He also became the director of the General Military Academy in Spain, which gave him the opportunity to travel to other places in Europe looking at their military academies. And it's in this way that Franco visits Hitler's Germany and Mussolini's Italy and makes some connections there that will have implications for Spain later. In 1931, the Spanish people called for democratic elections for the first time in 60 years, and the people overwhelmingly voted for a republic. Spain's monarch didn't want violence and unrest, and so he voluntarily went into exile and allowed the Republicans to take power. This new government made military reforms, and Franco's career stalled for a little bit while the focus was away from the military. This didn't last too long, though, because by 1935, Franco was back in the circles of power, and he was appointed the chief of staff for the Spanish Army, which is one of the highest political positions that someone in the military can achieve. By 1936, however, new elections stripped Franco of his office, and the new government sent him to an out-of-the-way post in the Canary Islands. The Canary Islands are a chain of islands that Spain had had under their control for a long time, and they were off the coast of Africa. So even though Franco is out of the way, out of Spain, he decides that he's going to join the rebels who are working against this new government. Again, he's out of the way, but he was able to maintain control of the army. He comes back to Spain, and the rebels and the army get near Madrid, which is the capital of Spain, although they don't take over Madrid yet. And they decided to choose Franco as their commander-in-chief. So essentially he becomes the leader of the military of this rebel force. This sets off a 3-year Spanish Civil War, and it was really pretty brutal. Groups were fighting pretty much city by city to try to bring all the cities in Spain under their control. Franco and his rebel force got military help from the Germans and the Italians. And many historians believe that they got help from the Germans and Italians because Hitler and Mussolini wanted to try out the weapons that they were building that they were planning to use in World War II. And so these new weapons brought a lot of destruction, devastation to these Spanish cities. Here we get airplanes capable of bombing and firebombing, which we'll see in World War II. And after one city called Guernica was firebombed, the Spanish painter Pablo Picasso painted this picture. And this is done in Picasso's style of Cubism. And even though it doesn't look like a traditional portrait or picture or still life, we can really see the tragedy, the devastation on the faces of the people. She's holding a dead baby. This guy is sprawled out. So even though the Cubist style is different from maybe what we're used to, you can still get the emotion, the devastation, the fright that people were living through. And Picasso painted this picture to go on display in the rest of Europe. And his idea was to try to bring attention to what was happening in Spain. Most of Europe and the US was really focused on what was going on in Italy and Germany, especially Germany, in terms of leading to World War II. So Picasso painted this in order to try to call attention to the suffering of the Spanish people. This canvas is huge. If you see it in person, it stretches for almost a whole big wall, and it's done in very somber colors. And again, you can see the tragedy, you can see the fear, the heartbreak on the faces of the individuals. So this was painted to try to bring attention to this devastation of the Civil War. Franco's rebels finally took control of Spain on April 1st, 1939, and this is when they finally get control of Madrid. Under Franco's regime, the Nationalist Party was the only party allowed, although they had folded in several smaller political parties into the Nationalist Party, so there wasn't as much of a strict doctrine of the nationalists in the way that we saw in some of the other countries. The nationalists arrested and imprisoned the former rebel fighters who had fought against them, also their opponents, political opponents, and there were executions, but under Franco we're talking about in the thousands, not the millions, as we've talked about with some of the other dictators. They did outlaw minority languages like Basque and Catalan, which were spoken in small areas of Spain, and any sort of political protest was repressed. Slightly different than some of our other dictators, Franco remains very, very close to the Catholic Church, so there's more of a religious element under Franco than in some of our other countries. And interestingly enough, Spain and Franco technically remained neutral in World War II, although they were sympathetic to Italy and Germany, and they did allow Germany to use some of their naval bases, but they never enter into World War II officially, in part because they're still recovering from the devastation of their own Spanish War, Civil War. Thanks for listening. I hope this helps.